The aboleth and the roper, last week the grell, and now an illithid? Why is it always tentacles when I play in this group? It's a real shame that you failed your dexterity check. You are grappled and restrained. Oh dear. The illithid's labial tendrils wriggle in anticipation as its dark, rubbery flesh inches closer, protruding towards you, itching for your moist skin, caressing your shape so sinuously with inquisitive attention. You witness a charm spell flickering in his candescent eyes, greedily aching for your compliance. Roll a wisdom check for me, please. I failed. Oh, now you are really grateful for that nice, thorough massage you're getting from your new friendly acquaintance. Please describe your reaction as its writhing purple flesh latches onto your tender, rosy lips, gently pulling at them, sliding through them, and kissing you inside and outside so diligently and eager. I moan. I feel like I need a cold shower after this one. Suddenly, emerging from the drain, several tendrils begin to slide ever so slowly towards your lathered feathers. I'm getting the heavy flamer. Wait, you can't just... Little did you know, I have a fetish for my own burning flesh. My name is Jacob Crowe, and welcome to the Crow's Perch. Before we start today's video, I would like to once again thank our sponsor, Apotheosis. Ever lie awake in the endlessly bleak fathoms of the Underdark and wonder, why am I restricted to a predetermined path of class features? What if I wanted to play a rogue who's got gains? Or a wizard spell thief with a pet dinosaur? Or a furry philosopher who practices surgery and medicine? There is a light at the end of this dark hole. Introducing Apotheosis. In Apotheosis, your character levels up with your actions. And by just playing how you want to, you can craft the build of your dreams. With dozens of abilities to choose from, Apotheosis allows you to make meaningful choices, synchronized dynamically with your own choices in character progression. Just as meaningful decisions are made dynamically in character building, so too does this function in Apotheosis' combat system. Sick of boring 7-turn long fights, where your fighter and barbarian take turns bonking the BBEG for 10 damage at a time, until your DM arbitrarily says he's dead now, because the cleric fell asleep 2 hours ago. With Apotheosis, combat is fast, deadly, and cinematic. Grapple, isolate, and perform collaborative attacks against your enemies to gain the upper hand. Fight dirty, and use positioning to keep your foes from aiding their allies, and pinning down their leaders and powerful henchmen. Every wound has the potential to end a PC's adventuring career, just as easily as it can defeat a powerful monster. And this is kept up with, even at high-level play, with Apotheosis' evasion and wound mechanics. If you want to be among the first to elevate your tabletop experience, then be sure to visit the Apotheosis Kickstarter page. The game is now officially funded, but there's still plenty of time to support the game's development before its release, as well as hitting some new stretch goals. The PDF is planned on being sold for $15, or $25 before shipping for the physical copy. But Crowe, you might ask, are you in the game? And to that I say, how did you escape from the cellar, Jimmy? And yes, if you send the message Crow's Perch to any of Apotheosis TRPG's socials, they will send you a special copy of a Crow's Perch themed stat block, which even includes a special magic item associated with the character. Also, you're obligated to tell me if he TPKs your party. Thank you once again to Apotheosis for sponsoring this video. And without further ado, let's get started. In today's story, we talk about boundaries. Boundaries. What are boundaries? Are they mere rivers to be forded? Gates to be besieged upon? or impenetrable fortresses with vast minefields you must tiptoe around in order to even get close? Or maybe, just maybe, you should just stop being a prick and accept that they're there, and if you gave a shift about your friends, you'd respect them regardless. Unfortunately, not every player recognizes this. And in today's story, we find out what happens when such a simple request is ignored, and a player's fetishes make their way into a game, forcing a friend group to make a hard decision. And so, without further ado, let's find a better place to hide all of your tentacle vor before your 2-year-old son finds it underneath your bed frame again, and gather up a murder, and get right into this story. TLDR, party member makes the campaign about his kink, goes nuclear when confronted, and torpedoes 10+ friendships because he refuses to respect boundaries. Our friend in DM sets up a text-based 5th edition campaign for us on Discord. We're playing a homebrew campaign with a serious, gritty tone. All of us create our characters accordingly, with the exception of one. Here's our party. Names changed. DM, the DM, Ezra, me, the High Elf Trickster Cleric, Tom, High Elf Death Cleric, Blaze, Tiefling Wizard, Jenny, the Dragonborn Druid, Limmy, Servitor Druid Ranger. I have no idea what a Servitor is. I'm just gonna assume it's the 40k one.
What is my purpose?
To cringe, young one. Only to cringe.
Oh yeah, there's more of them. Drew, Orc Barbarian, Zach Human Sorcerer, Weaver, Warforged Barbarian, Carl, the Tiefling Bard, and the Tailfeather in this story. Now, I want to preface this. We're all adults here. We've all been friends, or at least friendly with each other for years. We're all kink positive. No one cares what you like. We don't shame people. The problem comes along when Carl starts to play. You see, Carl's kink is being a baby. He's balls deep in this fantasy. Diapers, baby powder, bottles, pacifiers, breastfeeding, you name it. He's there. We all know this by virtue of knowing Carl for a few years. Weirdly, he treats his kink like a huge, shameful secret that would ruin his life if it got out, but has no problem with making references to it and play acting it all the time. But regardless, this wasn't a problem for any of us until he tried to get us to participate in it without our consent. Well, Carl rolls up the most aggressively naive, lawful stupid, I'm baby character he can possibly muster. His character looks like a tiefling who hails from the realm of Candyland. Picture strawberry shortcake with horns, standing next to a bunch of hardened ex-cons, and you have our party. Everyone, including the DM, is trying their best to make this work, because we're all friends, and we just want to play some Dungeons & Dragons. Enter the kink roleplay. In Carl's very first post as his character, he rolls up to the barmaid at the starting tavern and asks her for some milk, saying that he just finished drinking his bottle on the way into town. Cue a collective what the flock from the rest of us, but we do our best to RP around him. His character is the most bubbly, squeaky, giggly, aggressively positive person in all of the Forgotten Realms. He invades my character's personal space on multiple occasions and effectively forces her into the corner of any room they're in, because she's so preoccupied with trying to get away from him. Crowe here. You like what you like. You know, no one's gonna change that. If you're into tentacle hentai, that's totally cool. There's quite a bit of blending between the kink community and the D&D community, and in my opinion, that's completely fine. However, much of the practices of kink surround the idea of consent. So it's cool if you want to wear diapers, bro. Every dude in their 80s is probably wearing one right now. But for God's sake, please don't go around acting like it's this grave sin that would destroy your life, while simultaneously wearing a proverbial sign on your forehead that says, "Hey, you want to hear about the
Diaper I'm wearing right now?
All rants aside, on with the story. My character carries a deck of marked cards and uses them to make money. She plays a few hands with members of the party, wins some gold, makes a few friends. Carl gets jealous. No one is interacting with his posts because they are making everyone uncomfortable. He thinks if he acts like my character, he might get some interaction. So he demands that the DM gives his character a deck of cards too. DM, who was a nice person and trying to keep everyone happy and invested in the campaign, acquiesces. Carl pops back into the roleplay with a clumsy deck of cards he's apparently made with paper and crayons, and tries to make the party play Go Fish with him. This is met with about as much enthusiasm as you would expect. We push forward and meet our benefactor, and enjoy some good roleplay and character development over dinner, and then a soak in an elaborate bathhouse, notably improved by virtue of Carl saying his character was too baby to take a bath with everyone, and exiting roleplay immediately. Afterward, we go back to the tavern, shop around town for supplies, and start making plans to retrieve the MacGuffin we've been hired to steal. We've been trying to keep things serious, going over the map and determining marching order for our journey to the next town. In the middle of this, Carl returns from the market, hauling literally 60 cream pies. He pretended out of character that the joke flew over his head. Oh. Hey Carl, just give me 1 second, I gotta make a call.
FBI, open up!
He bought from a crass halfling baker, and about 40 pounds of assorted fruit everyone told him not to buy. He then pulls out a kazoo and starts loudly playing. Around this time, Weaver leaves the party, publicly citing time crunch, because Carl is making her so uncomfortable. We are all very saddened by the loss, because Weaver was a great character we really enjoyed role-playing with. This is the point where I throw up my hands, mute the chat, and walk away. I've been trying very hard not to ruin anyone else's good time, but Carl is being so aggressively stupid and infantile, it's ruining the entire campaign. There's no good way to roleplay with him in character, because if any of our characters met him on the street, they would have been more than likely to rob him and leave him for dead. He adds nothing to the story, and doesn't seem interested in anything besides playing pretend baby. DM gets fed up and approaches Carl privately, asking him to tone down the baby shtick and try to work with the tone of the campaign a little. She isn't even asking for big changes, just some minor tweaks to keep things running smoothly and preserve the rest of the party's comfort. Carl doesn't like that. Carl freaks out and refuses to change anything, saying,
"This is who I really am inside. You can't ask me to change myself."
DM says, "Okay, if you don't want to change your character, how about I help you make a new one?" Carl doesn't like that either. He rejects every suggestion or offer of help, and finally decides to pull his character out of the campaign. When he makes this decision, he also demands that his character be removed from the campaign by having the other players trick him into going to the market and then stealing his stuff and leaving town without him. All of us are uncomfortable with that, and we tell him so. DM very smoothly puts Carl on a bus in a much nicer way than he deserves, and we continue to play. This entire debacle prompts some of us to go through our private message history with Carl. We start comparing notes and discover that he's been talking shit about almost all of us behind our backs for years. When one of us is succeeding without his help, he hates it because he wants to be depended on. Hindsight is 2020, and on the reread, the manipulation and gaslighting really start jumping off the page. I go back about 3 years in my message history and find a long forgotten conversation of Carl telling me he's in love with DM and wants to serve her like a loyal knight, which opens another whole can of worms. We compare notes further and discover some nastier stuff. Carl has been role-playing his kink with almost everyone in our other Discord servers without their knowledge or consent, including minors. I'm a nurse in real life and work with medically fragile infants. Carl would regularly ask me about work in a way that was plausibly friendly. But looking back at it, it became painfully apparent that he wanted to hear about baby stuff to feed his kink. I was and am disgusted by this. There's more, but it's not worth going into here. You get the gist. At this point, we all decide that we've had enough. Carl, who had stayed in the game's server as a spectator, gets kicked. We cut ties with him, and kick and/or ban him from all of our personal and emoji servers. He changes his status to I still love you, but thankfully never makes a stink about it publicly. We ended up going back through the campaign as a group, and editing our posts to remove all reference to Carl and his character. The story is flowing nicely now, with a party who are actually invested in the setting and plot, and we're having a great time. Unfortunately, to this day, I don't think Carl understands what he did wrong. Carl disrespected his friends. He invaded their boundaries and forced his entire kink persona on them without their willingness or consent. But this goes beyond just the kink Carl has. Carl just sounds like a shit human being in general. The gaslighting, talking behind his friends' backs, and I'm not even going to get into the stuff he was messaging to the original poster. What about the kids she worked with? Ugh. To the DM and players, and to the original poster user Plague of Wasps, I wish you the best in your campaign. And the less Carl, the better. Thank you for tuning in to today's stories. And once again, a special thank you to Apotheosis for sponsoring this video. And once again, if you'd like that special stat block and the magic item associated with it for Apotheosis, be sure to message them on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook with the message Crow's Perch. And another special thank you to the Crow's Perch patrons. Introducing our fine feathered friends, R6 and Reuven Gritters, the Crow's Perch Burbs. Imagine, if you would, a burb that would pay more than $1, going all the way up to $3, our counts of quills. Our good friends, Netscape Navigator, Mexican, Zero Fang, and Haley. But if you think it ended there, kid, you're dead wrong, as we got 2 new Barons of Beaks, Vincent, McYeetly, Anja, and friend of the show, Den of the Drake. Keep flying high, Dragon Man. But what is a patron, if not compared to our illustrious Dukes of Feathers, Acroth, and Vanishing Thoughts? If you too would like to become a patron, feel free to follow the link below in my video's description. It helps support the channel, and it allows me to do some pretty cool stuff sometimes. Like this month, I'm doing a series of games on Roll20 with some of the patrons that wanted to sign up for it. This month's game is Blades in the Dark by John Harper and Evil Hat Productions. It's an amazing narrative game, and our first group of scoundrels just finished up with their first job. I am currently planning on having another group going on Tuesdays, so be sure to sign up and join in on the fun. And last but not least, what is a Crow's Perch video without Art of the Week? Art of the Week? This week's Art of the Week is by Spectrum Z, who created a fantastic piece. This is a visual representation of the table of dice goblins. As you can see, Den of the Drake has to play from outside, while I myself have red eyes whenever I play a game, because I'm in full gamer mode. The attention to detail is fantastic, from the assorted snacks, Crispy's iconic mask, Kunik's bunny ears, and the lovely little fins on RPG Tales' avatar. And who could forget Artificial DM's iconic skull? This is just adorable. And if you want your art to have the chance to feature on Art of the Week, just submit your art in the Crow's Perch art channel. I tend to pick stuff that's channel-oriented, but every now and again I'll just pick something that just looks cool to me. With all that out of the way, I'll see you next time as the crow flies.